In the far reaches of Siberia, where winter never loosens its grip, stands a fortress built for those the state refuses to forgive. Locals call it the Polar Wolf, a prison so brutal it's said the ice has more mercy than the guards. Escape is impossible, endurance is rare. Yet what happens inside its frozen gates isn't just about punishment, it's about breaking the human spirit. Step closer, and you'll see why this place is whispered about as the coldest hell on earth. The hell on earth. So where exactly do you put a prison when you want people to disappear forever? Russia found the perfect spot, a frozen wasteland called Karp, population 5,000, sitting 60 kilometers above the Arctic Circle. To give you perspective, this place is so remote that the nearest real civilization is over 1,900 kilometers away. It's like being banished to another planet. But here's the truly chilling part. This isn't some modern Supermax built with cutting-edge technology. Polar Wolf was constructed in 1961 on the bones of Stalin's gulags. Yes, you heard that right. They literally built this nightmare on top of where Soviet prisoners had already died by the thousands. It's as if they said, you know what this place of suffering needs? More suffering. When the first prisoners arrived in 1967, they weren't just locked up. They were forced to mine sand for railway construction in temperatures that would make Antarctica seem tropical. Imagine swinging a pickaxe when it's so cold that your breath freezes before it leaves your mouth. The temperature here? We're talking minus 45 degrees Celsius on a regular winter day. One former prisoner described it perfectly. Even in such temperatures, you can walk for more than half an hour only if you have time to grow back a nose, ears, and fingers. That's not an exaggeration. That's the daily reality for over 1,000 inmates. And if you think winter is bad, summer brings its own special torture. For 6 months of the year, there's virtually no sunlight. Then, when the sun finally returns, it brings clouds of mosquitoes and biting flies so thick they can drive people insane. But the location is just the beginning of this story, because what happens inside these walls makes the Arctic cold seem like a gentle breeze. So you've survived the journey to Polar Wolf. Congratulations. Now the real nightmare begins, because this isn't just a prison, it's a machine designed with one purpose, to completely destroy everything that makes you human. Let me paint you a picture of a typical morning. It's 6 a.m. and it's minus 40 outside. Guards storm into your cell and order you outside for roll call. You're wearing nothing but light prison clothing because that's all you're allowed. You stand in formation with hundreds of other prisoners, and here's the rule: you cannot move. You cannot clap your hands together to stay warm. You cannot rub your arms. You stand perfectly still for 30 to 40 minutes while the cold literally tries to kill you. And if just one person moves, everyone gets doused with ice-cold water. Think about that for a second. You're already freezing to death, and then they spray you with water in sub-zero temperatures. It's not punishment, it's an attempted execution. But wait, it gets worse. Your cell? There's no central heating. Instead, there are tiny radiators on the floor, if you're lucky. Some cells don't even have real radiators. They just have radiators painted on the walls. It's like a sick joke. The guards control the heat through water valves, and if you complain about anything, if you stand up for any rights whatsoever, they turn that valve and your cell drops to 10 degrees Celsius. You're literally living in a refrigerator, and the guards have the remote control. Now, when inspectors come around, magically the temperature shoots up to 25 degrees. The moment they leave, right back down to barely above freezing. Former prisoners describe it as living in a legalized torture chamber. And we haven't even talked about what happens when you really make them angry. Here's where things get truly disturbing, because the cold is just the opening act. Former prisoners describe Polar Wolf as a system devised to break the human spirit by making survival depend on total and unconditional obedience to the will of guards. And they've perfected this system over decades. Ukrainian filmmaker Ole Sentsov spent 5 years in a nearby facility and described the escalating horror. Beatings, humiliation, electric shocks, being kept in a cold cell naked or in wet clothes, but that's still not the worst. He continues, You can be sealed in the fetal position in an iron box where you can hardly breathe and have to urinate on yourself. Let that sink in. They have custom-built boxes designed to crush human beings into fetal positions, but here's the most insidious part. They've created a system where complaining makes everything worse. Too hungry? They'll feed you literal slop. Too cold? They'll turn down what little heat exists. In physical pain? Expect more exercise. It's a psychological trap where resistance only increases suffering. The guards also run an informant network among prisoners, meaning you can't trust anyone. Ever. One former inmate explained, there is no sense of community, which is typically what keeps prisoners sane in other facilities. Several former prisoners interviewed years after release still struggled with mental illness. Think about that. These people escaped this frozen hell, returned to normal society, and their minds never recovered from what they experienced. Even Russia's own prosecutors, who are notoriously lenient on prison conditions, identified violations so severe they were forced to intervene. When Russian authorities say conditions are too harsh, you know you're dealing with something truly monstrous. The inmates of the frozen wasteland. But who exactly ends up in this Arctic torture chamber? And how did the world's attention finally turn to this forgotten corner of hell? The official answer is Russia's worst criminals, serial killers, rapists, pedophiles, and repeat offenders serving 20 years or more. These are people society has decided should disappear forever. But there's another category of prisoners that reveals the true purpose of Polar Wolf: political prisoners. In December 2023, the world suddenly learned about Polar Wolf when Russia's most prominent opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, vanished for 19 days during a mysterious prison transfer. When he finally resurfaced, it was at Polar Wolf. Despite everything we've just described, Navalny tried to maintain his sense of humor, calling himself Father Frost and joking about his new winter gear. But here's what's not funny. Navalny spent up to 27 nights in solitary confinement with zero outside contact. This is a man who had already survived nerve agent poisoning and knew the regime wanted him dead, and they sent him to the one place designed to kill people slowly. Navalny wasn't the first political prisoner here. Platon Lebedev, a businessman connected to the Yukos oil case, served 8 years in Polar Wolf. The message is clear. Oppose the government and you'll disappear into the Arctic forever. But here's the thing that really shows you how this system works. The nearby facility, Polar Owl, went through a massive scandal in 2010 to 2012 when guards were caught beating confessions out of prisoners using systematic physical and psychological torture. The authorities tried to cover it up because high-ranking officials were involved. That scandal wasn't an exception, it was business as usual. These aren't isolated incidents or rogue guards going too far. This is a deliberate system designed to send a message. Step out of line, and you'll end up in a place where the cold itself becomes your executioner. And this system has been operating for over 60 years, refining its methods of breaking human beings. Here's the most disturbing truth about Polar Wolf. It's not some relic from a darker time. It's a thriving, expanding part of a massive system. Today, Russia operates about 700 penal colonies housing over 460,000 prisoners, and political prisoners aren't decreasing, they're multiplying. According to Memorial, Russia's former leading human rights organization before it was banned, political prisoners have tripled since 2018. Since the invasion of Ukraine, those numbers have exploded further under new laws that criminalize almost any form of dissent. But Polar Wolf represents something even more sinister than just political repression. It's the continuation of a philosophy that stretches back over a century. From 1947 to 1953, the railway beneath Karp was built by 120,000 Soviet prisoners, 20,000 of whom died in the process. Between 1932 and 1962, over 2 million political prisoners worked and died in 132 camps across this region. When Stalin died in 1953, the world thought the gulags had ended. They didn't. They just changed their name and kept operating. Prison experts note that modern Russian facilities retain the core Stalinist principle, using climate as a weapon of control. Today's polar wolf isn't just about punishment, it's about sending a message that echoes across continents and through history. It says that some places exist beyond hope, beyond help, beyond the reach of civilization itself. The prisoners there know this truth intimately. As one expert noted, there are hundreds of kilometers of tundra on one side and the mountains of the polar Urals on the other. Escape isn't just unlikely, it's impossible. So the next time you complain about the cold, remember that somewhere in the Arctic wilderness, a machine designed to break human beings continues to operate. And it's not slowing down. If anything, it's just getting started. What do you think about Siberia's polar wolf prison? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for more intriguing deep dives into the world's toughest prisons.